I still remember the moment I stepped out of the elevator on level 2 of that parking garage. I was exhausted, coming off a long day at work, and just wanted to drive home. My shoes clicked against the concrete as I walked along the rows of parked cars, breathing in the faint smell of gasoline and stale air. It was after 9 p.m., and most workers in the office building had already left. I expected to see only a few cars around, maybe a handful of lonely vehicles waiting for their owners. Instead, I saw a completely empty floor. No cars, no headlights shining, not even a dim reflection on the concrete. Confused, I paused to check the sign on the wall again. Level 2. That was correct, yet my car was nowhere in sight. A quiet tension settled in my chest as I tried to figure out if I'd simply hit the wrong button on the elevator or forgotten where I parked. But I was almost certain I had parked on level 2 that morning. A faint flicker of overhead fluorescent bulbs cast a dull glow over the wide, empty space. I started to walk deeper into the level, my footsteps echoing with each step. The echo made me uneasy because it felt like it wasn't just my own footsteps bouncing back. Every so often, the overhead light buzzed, sending a small crackle through the air. I kept scanning the rows for my car, a dark gray sedan I'd driven for years. My heart began to pound slightly harder in my chest the longer I failed to see it. My mind raced with logical explanations. Maybe I mixed up the levels. Maybe my car had been towed, or I parked in a hurry and forgot the spot. But it was unusual for the garage to be so completely empty on this floor, especially on a weekday evening. Feeling a rise of nerves, I decided to walk toward the ramp that led down to level 3 and check if my car was there. Before I could reach the ramp, a soft sound behind me made me turn around. It was a gentle scuff, like a shoe dragging on concrete. The hair on the back of my neck prickled. I looked over my shoulder, but no one was there, just the same wide, empty space. But on the ground, very clearly, were footprints outlined in a faint, dusty residue. They weren't there before. The prints looked like they started from somewhere near the elevator lobby and led away from me, heading toward a darker corner of level 2. I stared for a moment, wondering if maybe I had made them. But my own shoes left no marks. These footprints looked bigger, spaced differently, like someone else had been walking around. I took a step toward them. My rational mind told me it might be dust or stains left by someone who had ventured through earlier. But the footprints had a definite pattern. Each one pointed in a direct line that led away from the ramp. They almost seemed fresh in a place that should have been abandoned at this hour. I felt a chill crawl across my skin, but forced myself to follow them. After all, there was no one else around to ask for help, and I still didn't know where my car was. As I ventured closer, I noticed a sign posted near the exit. Stairs to lower levels. No public access. That was strange, because I knew the lower levels were open to public parking during the day. Perhaps the sign was old or for some specific area. Then more footprints appeared, turning from that side area toward the ramp that descended to level 3. I might have chosen to ignore them, but my gut told me these footprints meant someone else was down here, or had been recently. Maybe they knew something about where cars were relocated if the floor got too crowded, or if there was a security measure I didn't know about. Yet I couldn't shake off a creeping sense of unease. The air felt heavier in my lungs the farther down I walked. The overhead lights flickered more often, casting shaky shadows along the walls. My footsteps grew louder, or maybe my ears were just more sensitive to every tiny sound. Eventually, the footprints led me down the ramp to level 3, but instead of ending there, they continued. And I quickly realized there were no cars on this level either. My phone was in my pocket, but I hesitated to call anyone. Who would I call? The police, to say my car vanished along with an entire parking floor of vehicles? It sounded ridiculous. I decided to hurry, hoping that maybe one more level down, I'd find my sedan. But level 3 was empty, and so was level 4. The footprints maintained a steady track, leading me onward, step by step, as though guiding me. Each time I saw those prints curving around pillars, I paused to consider if I should just leave the garage and find help. But some bizarre curiosity pushed me forward. I had to see where they led. By the time I reached level 5, it was downright eerie. The lights along the ceiling made a low, buzzing noise. Now, I started to notice smudges of what looked like muddy water streaked near the prints. The footprints weren't as crisp. They were smeared, like someone was limping or dragging their feet. My heart rate picked up, pounding so loud I could feel the thump in my ears. Why did I think this was a good idea? I tried to calm myself, to think logically. Maybe this is a security guard who does rounds. Maybe there's been a leak in the building. But the emptiness kept reminding me how alone I was in this massive concrete structure. A sudden clang reverberated in the distance. I froze in place, listening. It could have been a dropped metal pipe, or the heavy door that sections off one level from another. I swallowed hard, wishing I had company, or at least some bright sunlight to chase away the dread. Gathering courage, I continued. The footprints led to a small door marked Maintenance Access. The sign next to it read, Level 6 Authorized Personnel Only. A chill rippled through me. This door wasn't an open ramp like the others. It was a thick metal door with a grated window near the top. I pressed my ear to the door. Through the metal I could catch faint mechanical hums or maybe ventilation fans. My palms felt sweaty as I gripped the handle. Part of me wanted to turn around, go back up to the ground floor, call security, and forget about my missing car. But that made me think, how was I going to explain any of this? Who would believe that an entire floor was empty? I found footprints, and now I was at a locked door to level 6. To my surprise, when I tugged on the handle, it opened. A stale rush of air hit my face, carrying the scent of damp cement. The overhead lights in the stairwell flickered on automatically, showing concrete steps going down. Without thinking, I descended the stairs. Each footfall echoed louder than the last, as if the concrete was amplifying any sound I made. The footprints continued below, still smeared, but I could see them heading deeper. After 2 flights, I reached another door labeled Level 6, Maintenance Garage. My heart sank. Maintenance garage? I had no reason to be in a maintenance area. Still, I followed the prints. The door squealed as it opened, revealing a wide, dimly lit space. Rows of old equipment, spare parts, and some abandoned scaffolding filled parts of the floor. Strange shapes covered in beige tarps lined the walls, but no cars were visible. This did not look like any normal parking area, yet I heard a distant drip of water echoing through the gloom. The footprints led further in, weaving around pillars and old crates. And then I saw it. My car. My dark gray sedan sat in the far corner, parked near a flickering overhead light. Relief washed over me for half a second, until I asked myself how it had gotten here. Why would it be on level 6 when I was sure I left it on level 2? I rushed over to it, ignoring the cold sweat forming on my brow. My keys were in my pocket, so no one had driven it here, unless they had a spare key. But that made no sense. I hurried closer, the clack of my shoes echoing in the empty space. As I approached the driver's side door, the overhead light flickered once, then went out. The entire corner plunged into darkness. My breathing grew rapid. Fumbling in my pocket, I pulled out my phone to use the flashlight. Its beam cut through the darkness, shining on the metal surface of my car. In that beam of light, I realized the footprints I had been following didn't stop next to my car. They continued behind it, disappearing into a darker corner. A sinking feeling seized my stomach. Was there someone here with me, watching from the shadows? My phone shook a little in my hand as I aimed it around, trying to see if anyone was hiding. The silence closed in on me, broken only by the soft drip of water from a leaky pipe overhead. Fighting the urge to run, I pressed the unlock button on my car's remote. The headlights flashed once, bright in the dim area, revealing a fleeting shadow gliding across the wall. My heart jumped into my throat. The shadow was human-shaped, vanishing the instant the headlights faded. I whipped my phone flashlight in that direction, but saw nothing except stacks of old boxes and a large metal tool chest. I told myself it could be just my own shadow, stretched and distorted by the sudden flash of the headlights. But it moved with a speed that made me doubt it. Desperate to leave, I grabbed the driver's side handle and yanked. The door wouldn't budge. My car beeped, confirming it was unlocked, yet the door felt stuck. I pulled harder, my breath coming out fast. Finally, the door gave way, and I slipped into the driver's seat, slamming it shut behind me. My hands shook as I stabbed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, echoing through the emptiness of this hidden floor. For a moment, I felt a surge of relief. I was safe inside my car, sort of. I flicked on the headlights, washing the area in bright light, hoping to chase away any lurking shapes. Then I pressed the gas pedal, heading toward what I assumed was an exit ramp in the far corner. The tires squealed on the slick concrete. My mind raced. How had my car ended up here? Was someone playing a cruel trick? As I approached the ramp, I realized there was a heavy metal gate across it. A padlock held it shut, preventing any exit by vehicle. My heart sank. I slammed the brake, the car skidding slightly. I scanned for another way out, but the place was a maze of pillars and locked gates. My headlights revealed a small side door to the left, probably leading to a hallway or maintenance corridor. Maybe I had to open the gate manually from inside that corridor. Leaving the engine running, I stepped out. My footsteps echoed, making me flinch each time. Now the footprints on the floor seemed to have vanished. Or maybe I just couldn't see them under the car's strong headlights. Still, an uneasy feeling gnawed at me, telling me I wasn't alone. I reached the side door, tested the handle, and found it was unlocked. With a trembling hand, I pushed it open. The corridor beyond was narrow and poorly lit. Something about it felt suffocating. Concrete walls, old pipes running along the ceiling, and a faint dripping noise that echoed endlessly. I walked forward, scanning the walls for any control box, switch, or mechanism that might open the gate. The overhead lights gave a weak, flickering glow. My footsteps sounded even louder in this tight space. Midway down the corridor, I spotted a metal panel labeled Garage Security Gate Control. This had to be it. I pried it open, searching the inside for a lever or a button. Among the dusty switches, I found one labeled Gate Release. My fingers hovered above it, hesitation making me pause. What if unlocking the gate let something else in or out? That thought felt paranoid, but after everything I'd experienced, it didn't seem impossible. Still, I couldn't stay here forever. I flipped the switch. Somewhere deep in the garage, I heard a heavy clang of metal. The gate must have unlatched. Relief flooded through me. I let out a shaky breath and turned around, ready to run back to my car. But as I pivoted, I noticed another corridor branching off to the right, its darkness deeper than the rest. A slight movement in that blackness drew my eye. A figure, perhaps. I froze, squinting, trying to see. My mind told me I should get out right now, but curiosity and fear locked me in place. For a second, I thought I heard breathing, low and ragged, coming from that corridor. A faint shuffle echoed, like a shoe scraping the floor. The memory of those footprints flashed in my mind. My heart thumped, urging me to flee. Without another second's hesitation, I turned around and ran back the way I'd come, ignoring whatever might be lurking in that adjacent hallway. My only goal was to reach my car, drive out, and never come back to this place. I arrived at my car in a rush, relieved to see the metal gate was now lifted halfway. No more locked barrier. I jumped inside, slammed the door, and gunned the engine. The car lurched forward, bumping over a small concrete edge, and then speeding up the ramp toward the exit. The flickering lights overhead stretched the shadows in wild patterns across the walls, but I kept my eyes on the path ahead. Level 6 rose to level 5, then 4, then 3, my car climbing each floor at a frantic speed. Oddly, they were still empty as I passed. Each level's lights flickered like they'd been disturbed by a momentary power surge. By the time I reached level 2, my knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I half expected to see something step in front of the car, some shape standing in the middle of the exit. But no one appeared. Finally, I saw daylight beaming in from the open garage entrance at street level. The late-night darkness outside the garage felt safer than the stale interior. Breathing heavily, I emerged onto the city street. Cars passed by, and bright streetlights illuminated the sidewalks. It felt surreal, like stepping from a nightmare into normal life. I turned onto the nearest road, not bothering to look back. My mind reeled with questions. How had my car ended up on level 6 behind a locked gate? Who or what created those footprints leading me there? Why did the entire place feel so empty and abandoned, as though it existed outside normal time? That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured dusty footprints stretching away into the darkness. I remembered the shadow that darted away in the headlights. Over the next few days, I avoided that parking garage entirely, opting to pay extra for a lot a few blocks away. Eventually, I told a close friend what happened, but we both knew it sounded too bizarre to be real. There was no rational explanation for the chain of events. Curiosity gnawed at me, though. Weeks later, I ventured back to the building during the daytime, hoping to see if the floors looked normal. This time, as I drove in, levels 2 and 3 were full of cars. People bustled in and out. I circled around, searching for any sign of that restricted level 6 ramp, but I never found it. There was no sign posted for maintenance garage and no heavy metal door. All I saw were standard parking ramps, each level heavier with cars. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. Sometimes, I think it was just a hallucination caused by exhaustion. Other times, I remember the crisp detail of those footprints appearing behind me, and the weight of the metal gate that slammed shut. Whenever I recall that shadow slipping away, my chest tightens. Something was down there in the dark corners of that parking garage. Maybe it lured me deeper on purpose. Maybe it wanted to show me something, or maybe it needed me to activate that gate. I'll never really know. Yet even now, whenever I drive into a multi-level parking garage, a small voice in the back of my mind warns me not to park too far from the exit. I make sure to remember my exact spot and keep an eye on my surroundings. Because deep down, I'm still afraid that if I stray too far, I'll find strange footprints leading me downward again, all the way to some hidden place that shouldn't exist. And if that happens, maybe this time I won't be able to find my way back.